Old Hollywood had a secret, one they didn't talk about, one they hid behind studio makeup and careful lighting. Plastic surgery, not the subtle kind, not the just a little work kind. We're talking about transformations so extreme, so painful, so bizarre, that some of these women became completely unrecognizable. Studios didn't just suggest these procedures, they demanded them. Contracts were written with clauses. Fix your nose, change your teeth, raise your hairline. If you didn't comply, you didn't work. And the women, they had no choice. It was conform or disappear. Today, we're talking about 9 actresses who went under the knife or worse and came out different people. Some became superstars. Others destroyed their careers. And a few? They paid a price that went far beyond their faces. These aren't rumors. These are documented, horrifying, and in some cases, tragic transformations. Let's start with the most extreme case of all. Marlene Dietrich didn't just get plastic surgery. First, the molars. Dietrich had her back teeth, her molars, surgically removed. Not because they were bad, because she wanted sharper, more defined cheekbones. Removing those teeth created a hollow effect that made her face look more sculpted on camera. It worked, but it also meant she couldn't chew properly for the rest of her life. Then came the facelifts. Multiple. So tight that she could barely close her eyes. Directors had to adjust lighting because her skin was pulled so severely, it reflected light differently than everyone else on set. But here's the most insane part. Dietrich had gold wires, actual gold threads sewn into her scalp and pulled back behind her ears. This was her secret facelift method. The wires pulled her skin tight, lifting her face without visible scars. She hid them under wigs and hats. And she did this for years. By the time she was in her 60s, Dietrich's face barely moved. She looked young, but frozen. Like a beautiful, expensive mask. She spent her final years in isolation, refusing to be photographed. Because the woman the world knew as Marlene Dietrich, she didn't exist anymore. Joan Crawford was obsessed with perfection, and Hollywood fed that obsession until it consumed her. In the 1930s, Crawford's face was already striking, strong jawline, wide-set eyes, a commanding presence. But the studio told her it wasn't enough. Her face was too square. Her cheeks needed to be softer, more feminine, so she did something unthinkable. She had her back teeth removed. All of them. On both sides. The idea was to create a sunken, hollowed cheek look. What they called society cheekbones. It worked. Her face transformed. Magazines called her the most beautiful woman in Hollywood. But there were consequences. Without those teeth, her jaw structure weakened. She developed chronic pain, and smiling became difficult. Watch her later films. Her smile looked strained, tight, almost painful. And she didn't stop there. Crawford had multiple facelifts, eyebrow lifts, and experimental procedures throughout her career. By the 1960s, she'd had so much work done that her face looked rigid, harsh, almost mask-like. She became a symbol of Hollywood glamour. But behind the glamour was a woman who had literally dismantled her own face to fit an industry standard. And the saddest part? The studio made her do it. She had no choice. May Wong was the first Chinese-American movie star, and Hollywood punished her for it. In the 1920s and 30s, Wong was stunning. Exotic, mysterious, and incredibly talented. But Hollywood didn't want exotic. They wanted assimilation. They wanted her to look less Asian. Studios pressured her to undergo surgeries to westernize her features, to change her eyes, to alter her face. And in desperation to keep working, she complied. She underwent experimental eyelid surgery, a procedure so early and so dangerous that it left permanent scarring. The goal was to make her eyes appear larger, more Western. It didn't work. It just made her look different. And worse, it made her feel ashamed of who she was. When surgery wasn't enough, Wong resorted to tape. She'd pull her skin back with adhesive tape hidden under her hair, stretching her face into a shape Hollywood found acceptable. She did this for hours on set. The pain was constant. But even after all of that, Hollywood still cast white actresses in Asian roles. They gave those parts to women in yellowface, while Wong, an actual Asian woman, was told she wasn't Asian enough for American audiences. Her story isn't just about plastic surgery. It's about an industry that demanded women erase their identity to survive. And Wong paid that price until it broke her. She died at 56. Exhausted, forgotten, and Hollywood moved on without ever acknowledging what they'd done to her. Rita Hayworth wasn't always Rita Hayworth. She was born Margarita Cancino, a Latina dancer with dark hair, dark eyes, and a low hairline that framed her face. Hollywood told her that wasn't marketable. So they erased her. The studio didn't just change her name, they changed her face. And the process was barbaric. Hayworth underwent electrolysis, a process where an electric needle is inserted into each individual hair follicle to destroy it permanently. Sounds painful? It was. And she didn't do it once. She did it for 2 years, multiple sessions per week, hundreds of hours of needles stabbing into her forehead, temples, and hairline. The goal? To raise her hairline an entire inch. to make her forehead look larger. More elegant, more white, it worked. Her hairline receded, her face transformed. She dyed her black hair red, changed her name, and became Rita Hayworth, the ultimate American beauty. But the woman in the mirror wasn't her anymore. She'd literally had her identity burned away, one hair at a time. And the psychological toll? Devastating. Hayworth struggled with identity issues for the rest of her life. In interviews, she'd say, "They fell in love with Gilda. But they woke up with me." She spent decades playing a character that wasn't real. And the worst part? Hollywood made her destroy herself to create it. Lupe Vélez was a firecracker, a Mexican actress with beauty, talent, and a personality that lit up every room she entered. But Hollywood had a problem with her. She was too ethnic, her nose was too wide, her features were too Mexican, so they sent her to a surgeon, multiple times. Vélez underwent several nose jobs trying to achieve the Hollywood standard. But each surgery left her less satisfied. The results were never what she wanted. And worse, they changed her face in ways that made her feel disconnected from her heritage. She also underwent dangerous skin lightening treatments. In the 1930s, these weren't regulated. They were toxic, and they caused long-term damage. But even after all the surgeries, all the pain, all the money spent, Hollywood still typecast her as the hot-blooded Latina. They took away her identity, and then mocked her for not having one. Vélez fell into depression. She struggled with self-image, relationships, and the industry's relentless cruelty. And in 1944, at just 36 years old, she took her own life. Her suicide note didn't mention Hollywood, but everyone who knew her understood. The industry broke her. Surgery didn't save her career, it destroyed her sense of self. Lupe Vélez deserved better, and Hollywood owes her an apology it will never give. Phyllis Haver was a silent film star, beautiful, successful, and beloved by audiences. But when talkies arrived, she panicked. Her face, which worked perfectly in black and white silent films, looked different on camera with sound. The lighting was harsher, the close-ups were tighter, and the studio told her she needed to modernize her look, so she did. And she went too far. Haver underwent a series of surgeries: nose job, chin reduction, cheek implants, and eyebrow lifts. The goal was to look younger, fresher, more talkies ready. The result, she looked like a completely different person. Audiences didn't recognize her. Critics said she'd ruined her face. And worst of all, casting directors stopped calling. Not because she looked bad, but because she didn't look like Phyllis Haver anymore. The woman they'd loved on screen was gone, replaced by someone unfamiliar. Haver retired from acting shortly after. She married a millionaire and lived a quiet life. But she never acted again. Her career ended the moment she tried to save it with surgery. It's one of Hollywood's cruelest ironies. She changed her face to stay relevant, and it made her irrelevant. Mae West lived to be 87 years old. And for the last 30 years of her life, she barely looked human. West was obsessed with staying young, so obsessed that she underwent facelift after facelift after facelift, and each one pulled her skin tighter, smoother, more artificial. By the time she was in her 60s, her face was so tight she could barely blink. Her eyes were permanently wide. Her skin didn't move when she spoke. She looked like a wax figure, and it got worse. West wore wigs 24/7. Not just for appearances, they were glued to her scalp. The adhesive pulled her skin even tighter, creating an unnatural lift effect. She never took them off, even at home, even in bed. She also had her teeth replaced multiple times, underwent experimental injections, and used so many skin treatments that her complexion took on an unnatural sheen. In photos from her 70s and 80s, Mae West looks ageless, but she doesn't look alive. She looks preserved, like a beautiful, expensive, tragic museum piece. She wanted to stay young forever. And in a way, she succeeded. But the cost was her humanity. Jeanette MacDonald was one of the greatest opera singers in Hollywood. Her voice was her career, her talent, her identity. And then she got a nose job. It was supposed to be simple. A minor adjustment to make her profile more camera-friendly. The studio insisted it wouldn't affect her singing. The surgeon promised it was safe. They were both wrong. After the surgery, MacDonald's voice changed. The resonance was different. The tone was off. Her nasal passages, critical for opera singing, had been altered. And the way sound traveled through her head was permanently affected. She spent months with vocal coaches trying to relearn how to sing, to adjust her technique, to compensate for what the surgery had taken away. She eventually adapted, but her voice was never the same. Critics noticed, audiences noticed, and MacDonald knew. The irony is brutal. She changed her face to look better on camera, and in doing so, she damaged the one thing that made her a star. Her later films were successful, but her singing career declined, and for the rest of her life, she privately blamed that surgery for stealing her gift. Barbara Stanwyck was one of the greatest actresses of her generation. Tough, expressive, and completely fearless on screen. But in the 1960s, she made a mistake. She got a facelift, and it was so aggressive, so extreme, that it changed the way she could move her face. The surgeon pulled her skin so tight that her eyebrows were permanently raised. She looked perpetually surprised, shocked, and worst of all, she couldn't relax her face. For an actress who built her career on subtle expressions, on micro-expressions that conveyed entire emotions, this was devastating. Watch her work before and after the surgery. Before, every flicker of emotion plays across her face. After, she's frozen, stiff. Her eyes are wide, but they don't convey anything. The nuance is gone. Directors noticed. Casting directors noticed. And Stanwyck herself knew. She had to completely adjust her acting technique. She relied more on her voice, her body language, her presence, because her face couldn't do the work anymore. She continued acting into her 70s, but the roles changed. She played harder characters, colder characters, because that's what her face could do now. Barbara Stanwyck didn't lose her talent, but she lost the tools she'd spent decades mastering, and Hollywood made her feel like she had no choice.